إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. أما بعد. Recently, I was asked a very interesting question. And the questioner who was asking is very important, because the one who was asking me this question was a 7-year-old girl, 7 years old. And she asks me that if Allah is the one who created everything, then who is the one who created God? If God creates everything, who created God? And it's a very interesting question she asks. There's nothing wrong with the question. A curious mind, she wants to know. And as our youth grow up and progress, we have to be aware and be ready to answer questions like this based on knowledge, based on logic, based on reasoning. And the context we have to understand is that today, regardless of where we live in this world, that there is a battle going on, especially for our youth, all over the world. And this battle is greater than any physical battle with weapons and warfare. This battle is attacking the hearts and the minds, the ideologies. And the two means, the two weapons they use to attack, or the two weapons that are used to attack, are the two greatest threats to a person's belief system in life. Islam or anything else, a person believes in something and he's living in that way, a Muslim for example, there are two things that can throw them off, and these are the weapons that are being used, ash-shahawat wa shubuhat. And the first of those, ash-shahawat, are desires. So a person knows that, for example, stealing is wrong, but he has a desire for wealth or for something, he steals. Likewise, in Islam, a Muslim knows what's right and what's wrong, but if his desires lead him astray, he cannot control them, it could lead him to not only sinning, to leave everything he believes in what is true. I'll give you an example, an extreme example. Ibn Kathir narrates in Bidayah wa Nihaya that when the Muslims were at war against the Romans at one point in time in history, and they used to go to the lands of the Romans for battle, and the Muslim army enters the lands of the Romans, there is one amongst them, amongst the Muslims, who fights, who knows the Quran, who prays, who does good things. But as they're entering the land of the Romans, he sees a castle. In this castle he sees a woman, a Christian woman. And he looks at her once and he keeps staring at her. He can't stop looking. And so his desires become enticed. And so he wants to go speak to her. He goes to speak with her. And now they increase and increase even more. He gets to the point he wants to be with her. He wants to marry this woman. So he asks her, she says, look, my father and I, we are very strong Christians, and he will never allow us to be married unless one condition is met. Unless you leave your way, you leave your religion, and become a Christian, I will marry you. So this man, he agrees, his desires become so great, he leaves Islam, he leaves everything, becomes a Christian, and he marries this woman. And the Muslims leave him. The Muslims sometime later return to this land of the Romans. And as they enter this land again for another battle, They see now in the castle, looking down, is that woman and that same man who is now her husband, who was once a Muslim. And they recognize him. So they speak out to him and they ask him, what happened to you? What happened to the prayer you used to pray with us? What happened to the days you used to fast? What happened to the Quran you memorized? And you memorized so much of it. And he answers simply, that I swear I've forgotten everything I memorized from the Quran. Every single verse I knew, I forgot it. Except one. There's one verse that stays with me, I haven't forgotten that. Everything else about Islam I've forgotten. What is that verse? As Allah says, رُبَّمَا يَوَدُّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْ كَانُوا مُسْلِمِينَ. That it may be one day that the ones who disbelieve, the ones who reject Islam, they wish and they hope one day that they were actually Muslims. But they can't. They wish and hope that they would be Muslims. That's the only verse that remained with them. And this is an example of the shahawat, the desires. And many of our youth are being left for their desires, uncontrolled, do whatever they... I've had 9, 10-year-olds come to me and say, you know what, I have a phone, and I have YouTube and this and that, I can do whatever I want on the internet. Nobody watches over me. This is free. So this is a great thing we have to remember, but with desires, there is a greater attack, there is a greater threat. One that is even more dangerous. And that is ash-shubuhat, that is doubts. Doubts in a person's system, belief system, doubts in a person's way of life. And these doubts come to us today, in our youth today, because of 2 reasons. Number 1, ignorance. They don't have the knowledge to begin with. And number 2, misinformation. That a lot of knowledge they're given is not accurate. It's not the truth in itself. That it's misinformation. And today there's been a great mirage that's been formed in the Western world about the rejection of belief, the rejection of all religions, not just Islam, and this new idea of this new age atheism, that to believe in God is fairy tales and fantasy and is just silliness. And to reject God and religion is reason, is logic, is science, is absolute truth. So how do we counter this? And the answer, how do we counter both these threats, the desires and the ignorance and the misinformation, the doubts? We counter them both, as Allah tells us in Surah Al-Asr. He says, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Allah says, indeed, by time, all of mankind is in loss. Everybody is in loss, except for what? 2 things. The first 2 are the most important. The ones who believe, آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, the ones who do good deeds. So the more good deeds you do, your iman raises, your faith gets stronger, and so on and so forth. We know this. But listen from this verse what the scholars derive. This is the most important point here today. The scholars derive from this verse that a person, to be safe from these 2 threats, needs to have 2 things, first and foremost. The second of them is good deeds. So you do righteous good deeds, you get closer to Allah. The first of them is good, sound knowledge. Knowledge that leads to absolute certainty. Now notice in the surah, Allah says, everybody is in loss except for the ones who have faith, the ones who believe and do good deeds. Iman and good deeds. The scholars say, the ones who have knowledge, ilm, and then do good deeds. So Allah is saying the first thing you need is faith. The scholars are saying the first thing you need is knowledge. Why are they seemingly going against the verse and taking something else out? They are telling us that it is not possible for a person to have iman, for a person to have faith. It is impossible. They cannot have faith or iman except if they have knowledge. That every single person's faith in anything you believe in, especially Islam, it is not really iman, not really faith, unless it is built on knowledge. Knowledge doesn't mean that the pillars of Islam are 5 and the pillars of iman are 6. Knowledge means that deep knowledge, going from 0 to establishing Allah, to establishing why He exists, to establishing the Sharia, to why the Quran, to everything, deep and sound knowledge that doesn't end, that leads to absolute certainty. And this is the number 1 cure. Number one cure for these two things is to have sound knowledge that leads to absolute certainty. Because this issue, for example, of atheism, it's not a new issue. It's not something that just came up in the last 20 years and everybody's confused now. It's been dealt with by Muslim scholars for centuries and generations and centuries, thousands, hundreds and hundreds of years. And in fact, the atheists of those times were a lot stronger in their arguments, in their reasoning than the atheists of today. Why? Because the atheists of today, they don't know much about religion. So they know a few things about Islam here and there, and they attack. And they use one or two things, one of the small issues, and they attack the whole religion. The atheists of the past, they knew exactly what the religions, they were studied in religions, Christianity, Islam, and they attacked it from the inside. And they knew logic and they knew philosophy. And that's why the scholars of Islam, they dealt with these issues. Imam Ghazali, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Sina, Ibn Taymiyyah, so many others, and they refuted them. But today our problem is what? That the atheist stands up and says this, and this, and everybody shakes and everybody's confused because we don't have that knowledge. Because we're at a time we have ignorance, we don't have that certainty, and we don't pass that certainty on to our youth. And this is the number one problem first and foremost. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه من بعد. I wish today to present you with just one example of the sound knowledge can lead to sound certainty. That Allah gives us just two verses in the Quran. Think about these verses, recall them, go back home, discuss them with your families. A beautiful two verses that puts forth the existence of Allah. He challenges everybody else. And this is in Surah Tur, verse 35 and 36. He says, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بَلْ لَا يُوقِنُونَ. Allah first tells us an important point. He says, were you created from nothing? Or did you create yourselves? Or did you create the heavens and the earth? Bal, the ones that reject and think they know, they have no certainty. What does this actually mean? Think about these verses for the next 5 minutes and ponder upon them. Allah first tells us an important fact, that our existence, the universe, it has a beginning. It had a beginning. And this is agreed upon in science today, mostly. That our existence, our universe, it has a beginning. And everything that has a beginning must have a cause. كُلُّ شَيْءٍ لَهُ بِدَايَةٍ لَهُ سَبَبٍ. Everything that has a beginning must have a cause. So Allah challenges us, what caused us to exist? And the first possibility He gives us is, were you created from nothing? And if you ask the people today, nobody would acknowledge this. There are some mathematicians who may say, in mathematics this could be possible from nothing, but physically in our world, nobody admits that we can come from nothing. To bring something from nothing is physically impossible. So this first possibility is ruled out. Allah then says, أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Or did you create yourselves? Did they create themselves? And think about this. For us to create ourselves, we have to be created and then make ourselves. We have to be created and uncreated at the same time. And this is a contradiction. Impossible, cannot happen. You cannot be present, exist, and then make yourself at the same time. So, the second option is also invalid. The third option, Allah says, is, or did they make the heavens and the earth? This implies a very important option. He says that were they made by something else that was also made? So sometimes today people come and say, you know what, maybe the universe was made or a result of a different universe. Something else that was also made. And this is an argument. So how do we answer this? We say, if we were created by something that was made, then who made that thing? So they say something else that was made. So we say, who made that thing? They say something else that was made. And it goes on and on and on, and there's no stoppage. There's no end to this. And if there's no end, there's no creation. I'll give you a physical example today. I have a piece of paper, and I want a pencil. And I want to draw a circle on this piece of paper. So I ask, my brother sitting to the left, can I borrow a pencil? He says yes, but I have to ask the one beside me. So he asks him. He says yes, I have to ask the one beside me. So they keep asking and asking and asking and asking, and there's no end to this. This is called the dependency argument, that each of them are dependent on the other. So it goes on and on and on, and there's no end. If there's no end, will I ever get a pencil? No. So I can never draw. So the fact that we were made, it means that it ends somewhere. That this link of creation, something that made, has to end somewhere by necessity. And that thing that it ends at has to be uncreated. It must be by necessity uncreated. And that is who we call God. And that is who we call Allah. And that is what nobody can answer today. If you keep saying that this person created and that created, then where does it end? It never ends. And we need by necessity again something that made everything that is external and that is not created. And again, that is what we call Allah. To end with the last question, to end with the first question I was asked in the beginning, who created God? So we say, okay, we admit that maybe something external made us and that thing was not created. But who created God then? The answer to this question, we just answered. We said two things. The first thing, if you remember, I said about the world, that everything that has a beginning must have a cause. But God, does not have a beginning. So He does not need a cause. He does not need to be created. He is out of our time, out of our constructs of time and space, so He does not need a creation. So He does not create it. The next thing is, we said by necessity, something has to be there that was not created. That is God. And if you ask that, you're asking the same question, who created that which was not created? The question itself is a contradiction. Who wrote that which was not written? Can you have a circular triangle, a triangle that is also a circle? It's a contradiction. How we just presented. So the fact is, we answered this question already, that God has no beginning, therefore He does not need a cause. He is outside of our universe, therefore He has no time and space, therefore He does not have to be created. And He is the only thing that we depend upon that is not created. At the end of the day, even the ones who reject God and religion and everything else, at the end of the day they have hope in something. In the most dangerous of times, everybody turns back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are many, many examples of atheists who were strong atheists, and at one point in their time something shook them in their life, and they went and they had hope in who? They asked God directly, and their prayers were, or their ask was answered, and they left many examples. This is for another time, inshallah. So I leave you with this summary. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us sound knowledge, to give us certainty in our faith and our iman. Ameen. We ask Allah to protect us and our youth from all of the evil desires and all of the misinformation and ignorance, and give us a sound knowledge so we can base our faith on that. Ameen. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم نسألك الجنة وما تقرب إليه من قول أو عمل، ونعوذ بك من النار وما تقرب إليه من قول أو عمل. اللهم ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. الحمد لله رب العالمين.